Whether your beer is in a bottle, can, or glass, kick back and relax. It's Better on Draft.
We are live, episode 350 of the Better on Draft podcast. My name is Ken. Thank you so much for joining us. It is Friday night, 8:30 p.m. It's July 5th, so you might hear in one of our guests' background some firecrackers and fireworks going on. But let's go around and see what everybody's drinking. Starting with myself, I have a Spring Coast style ale that I got from the Maine Beer Company. I believe I got that from a Total Wine out in Tennessee. Wendy, what are you drinking over there?
I am drinking a Holy Laser White Show IPA.
Oh, Mike's sounding a little low. Make sure you want to fix that. We have two guests with us right now. Joining us last minute. I actually texted one of them last night, hoping that we can bring them on. We'll start with Joe. Joe, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, what you do for work, and just a little bit about yourself and what you're drinking, of course.
All right, Joe Infante. I'm an attorney at the law firm of Miller Canfield, based out of Grand Rapids. Most importantly, I am drinking a 2017 Bell's Black Note that I pulled out of the cellar. What I do, I am a beverage lawyer, so I represent breweries, wineries, distilleries, cideries, meaderies all over the country, acting as essentially an outside general counsel for all of their legal needs, whether it be trademarks, licensing. We call it trade practice, which is what we're going to talk about today. Mostly, I think, is trade practice. Been doing this for 15 years or so.
Yeah, and good evening, everybody. Thanks for having us. I'm drinking a beer called Decades. It's an English barley wine, collab between the 5 Points Brewing Company, my old mates from London, and Siren Beer, which is about 60 miles west of London. They each had their 10th anniversary during the same year, so they made a barley wine with 10 different malts, and it was a 10-hour boil, so it's delicious. My name is Chris, and I work with Joe at Miller Canfield, do a lot of similar things to Joe. I'm mixing a bit more on the transactional side too, so if we have a brewery, winery, distillery, meadery, brand, etc. for sale, or somebody buying it, I get involved on that level too. So happy to be here.
Does your team stick within the craft beverage industry, or more so just in the hospitality industry?
We are focused mostly on craft beverage. I will say we do not represent wholesalers. We stay away from that piece of it because it's a huge conflict issue, and don't get me started about the 3-tier system and franchise laws if you want to be really bored. We do represent others in the hospitality business, some bars, some restaurants, golf courses, bowling alleys, cider bowling alley combos. We have one of those in our ranks. But then Miller Canfield. We're a large firm. We're a 200 lawyer firm, so we do we do everything that anyone needs, the boring law stuff. And in my practice, part of my practice, I'm a trial lawyer, so I do corporate litigation, and occasionally that will mix together. Like Chris and I and two of our partners just finished a 2.5-week trial in federal court where we were suing on behalf of 11 Michigan wineries, suing their local township over their zoning laws and arguing they were unconstitutional in an effort to expand the hospitality that they could give to customers.
Joe, I think you forgot to. Oh, sorry, Ken. I just wanted to mention laundromats too. Laundromats that also serve beer and wine. So that's also part of the client mix.
That's true.
Well, you know what, that actually, let's kind of go into there. When you have these mixed business entities, so you have a grocery store that is also serving beer, like a Whole Foods, or I know Giant Eagle does a lot over in Ohio where they have beer. How do these retailers go about like the ability to do so? Because if you have the ability to sell booze while people are shopping, I feel like a lot more people would want to do that to keep people in there and getting them a little loose and getting their wallets a little bit more loose.
You know, it's funny on that. I can remember 12 or so years ago, I'm in Grand Rapids. I was talking to a local store here that had what we call an SDM and an SDD. SDM is your typical license for like a grocery store. It's a beer and wine to go license. So every grocery store has a SDM. SDD is a liquor to go license or a spirits license. They're two different licenses. And I was actually talking to a store owner, and I said, you know, you really should get a Class C license, which is an on-premise license. That's what a restaurant or bar has. It's called a Class C. And he said to me, well, it's illegal. I can't have both of them. I go, no, it's not. I've looked at the code. You can absolutely do this. You can hold the two of them together. And we went round and round for a long time. I said, it'd be great if people could walk around your store and drink a beer and, you know, while they shop. And this guy was convinced that I was wrong. And then Horrocks did it. I think Horrocks was the first one that I knew of. The Horrocks in Lansing was the first one I knew that did it. And they did it here at the one in Grand Rapids. And he came back to me and said, yeah, you're right. We should have done it a long time ago. Really what it is it's really just the 3-tier system. We don't get too much into, but you know, there's 3 tiers of alcohol. There's the producers, which are your breweries and your wineries. And then you have the wholesalers, your distributors, and then you have the retailers. And a retailer is a bar, a restaurant, a grocery store, a golf course. You can hold any license really within the same tier. And so a grocery store can have a to-go license like an SDM and a Class C license. You can just hold them together. And there's really no extra hoops to jump through. So like every Meijer could do it, every, you know, D&W could do it, every Spartan store could do it. It's just a lot of them don't want to. You know, like a Whole Foods or a, you know, especially markets like Horrocks, it actually makes sense to do it. They're a little smaller. You got to worry about, I mean, I'd be concerned about, you know, a Walmart or a Meijer. They're just so big. How do you control the alcohol consumption at those places?
Whoa.
Yeah, and sorry, Wendy. Go ahead.
That's okay. So Horrocks makes you give them your license, and they actually have it in their system, so they know exactly how many beers you had the entire time you were there.
Well, yeah.
That's a good move. I like
So
that.
Meijers could do the same thing.
I guess, but they got to have someone walking around checking that. You also have the issue of sales to minors. You know, the Horrocks here. I've been there, and it's big, but it's not enormous. And they have the bar kind of in the back right corner, maybe. It seems a little more controlled when you're getting into a Meijer or a Walmart, where you know those are massive stores. I think it's really more difficult to control the alcohol in those places.
I think it would be a pretty significant uphill climb to get it through the regulators in Lansing to do a Meijer. It'd be a fun challenge, but it's just so expansive, and the regulators don't necessarily love really large premises where alcohol is available. Just because, as Joe was getting at, you know, the security aspect is tough to stay on top of.
Yeah, we did do a really fun project in Indiana pre-COVID, so whenever that was, where we actually put a brewery in a grocery store, and it was a separate company. It was Greenbush. So Greenbush actually had a brewery location in a grocery store in South Bend, and that was a really fun project to work on, and it was really, really cool. But I think COVID killed that thing. But I know the way we had that set up is you couldn't bring the beer from the brewery into the grocery store. It was just like, it was in like a sort of a corner of its own. It was its own space kind of in the corner.
One thing before I pass it off to Wendy, I want to make sure that I mention none of this is actual legal advice. This is full for entertainment purposes. Please do not take what these gentlemen say as a true letter of the law, as I'm sure they are not in the mood to defend themselves in their own lawsuits for something that they said on a podcast that they so graciously came on last minute. But Wendy,
Yeah, I'll add to that. One thing that in what Chris and I do, which is actually very frustrating but very fun, is so much of this is is either new or gray, or you're not quite sure how it's going to go through until, we actually start working with the regulators to say, hey, we've got an interesting idea. Our client has an interesting idea. How can we make this happen? Like, Chris's laundromat idea, project from last year is a perfect example. There was nothing in the law that said a laundromat could not have a liquor license. But it took, Chris, how long did it take you guys to get that through?
Took us 18 months. We had to take it away from the agency and go to Kent County Circuit Court just to get the right people to start paying attention. So it was, I honestly thought it was, well, here's Horrocks, here's a laundromat. What's the difference at the end of the day? It's not the sort of place where people show up to drink 5 or 6 beers. They show up to drink 1 or 2, and then they're on their way. So yeah, it's I've said it before. We're good at the weird stuff. The really straightforward things, anybody can deal with that.
Well, we're good at those too.
We're just fine at those. But if there's something truly novel or weird, that's where we have the most fun, I guess.
The laundromat thing is genius, in my opinion.
It is.
Right?
It is.
Recently had my washer break down and I had to go to the laundromat. And while I was there, I was like, man, it would be really nice to have a beer right now.
You went to the wrong laundromat.
Well, it was kind of far to drive to get to Kent County. So
Okay.
Yeah. How far are you from Grand Rapids?
yeah, like 2.5 hours. Anyways, I have some questions. Speaking of underage drinking, I tend to scroll on the social medias a little too much sometimes. And I ran into a video of a bartender that a guy was trying to order a non-alcoholic beer for his 13-year-old son, which obviously I understand why that doesn't make any sense. But there were people in the comments that couldn't grasp their head around it. But it led to a few other questions for me, because I was always under the impression that you couldn't have, like, a teenager couldn't sit at the bar. You have to be 21 to sit at the bar.
That is the rule in Indiana, for sure, where often minors aren't even allowed into the bar room. You have to have a separate bar room from the dining room. I come with perspective from Wisconsin, where if you're under 21 and you're with a parent or a spouse who's over 21, it's bartender's choice. You are actually allowed to consume as a minor. It's just that it's not illegal. The establishment can kick you out. But I have seen, at least in my personal experience, the non-alcoholic beer sales still require an ID in Michigan. I was even carded for hop water. I think one of the Lagunitas hop waters, I was asked to show ID for that, and that's absolutely zero alcohol. So I guess that's just my first thoughts on it.
I think the thing to remember on all of this, either non-alcohol or alcohol to begin with, it's the bar, the restaurant has the discretion to decide whether or not they want to serve you, not serve you. If you ordered a beer, and you were over 21, they could just decide they didn't want to serve you because, they might think, well, you might give it to somebody else, so I'm not going to serve you because I know you're with a bunch of minors. So they can just decide not to serve you. Obviously, if they think you've had too much, they're going to decide not to serve you, even if you haven't had too much. They can just make that decision. So a lot of it just goes back to a lot of it's just the restaurant and the bar. It's their choice because they need to be safe on, who they serve and how much they serve. Because I can tell you that.
Does that work for off-premise as well? Like if I went to, say, Zatuna Liquor over in Rochester Hills, just south of M59 on Rochester Road, gracious sponsor of Better on Draft podcast.
Sounded that way.
Yeah.
Could Jack deny sale to anyone? Because, obviously, if they came in and they're inebriated, he could just be like, probably no, stop. But if he feels the same way, like, he might be buying for a minor or,
Yep.
One way or another, like for even to go, if you're of legal age, mind and body, Jack can still deny you for X, Y, and Z reason.
That is his right and his job, right? If he walks in and he sees a patron walk in, and there's 6 15-year-olds on bikes hanging out outside, and a 25-year-old walks by and talks to those kids and then walks in, and he wants a 30 rack of Mad Dog, he can say, well, I'm not selling you that because I know it's going to those 15-year-old kids. Like, they still make Mad Dog? Or Red Dog.
Red Dog.
I was like, Matt, the wine cooler?
So Mad Dog 2020?
Yeah.
No, Red Dog.
It's a lot harder to find that now.
I just remember what my girlfriend in high school, her dad drank that and loved it.
Classy fella.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned NA.
He was a doctor.
Like I said.
and the one thing that I wanted to ask regarding NA beer is that why, within Michigan, why do we have to show ID? Because that's the rule is Michigan for NA beer. Why do I have to show ID? And does that, because obviously it's a 0.5% or less, does that constitute over to say like kombucha, not like Unity Vibration, but just like regular kombucha that has a little bit of fermentation, a little bit of ABV?
You're just getting okay. This is the rabbit hole I do want to get into. So
yeah. Well, first of all, the carding thing I think is a direct result of Michigan regulators taking underage sales extremely seriously, and they're being abundantly cautious. I don't know that there's anything in the law that says you must card someone who's trying to buy NA beer. I just don't know. And I think what Joe's about to say next is going to explain why that may or may not really be the law, because it's the less than 0.5% just does not come under their jurisdiction.
So where I get heated about NA beer because I'm a big fan of NA beer. I drink a lot of NA beer because I think that it's important. I'm old, and I can't, throw down, 12 beers anymore. 3 beers and I'm ready for bed. But like when I'm out on a Saturday afternoon, I'm going to have 2 regular beers and 2 NA beers just because I can't have that many, and I really think we should sell more NA beer. My big problem is the fact that it's actually difficult to buy NA beer, and that is because of liquor control. So the Michigan Liquor Control Commission has taken the position that non-alcoholic beer is beer in Michigan, which means that a brewery, like a microbrewery here, cannot sell NA beer if it's made by somebody else. So like Athletic is the one everybody knows, right? But you can't go into Founders or Bell's or New Holland or Bavant, the place over here. You can't go in there and order an Athletic non-alcoholic beer. You can order a Coke, right? You can order pop, but you can't get an non-alcoholic beer because liquor control says, well, that's beer. My position is I think liquor control is wrong. And they're wrong, and I've argued this till I'm blue in the face. So it all goes back to the Michigan Constitution. So the Michigan Liquor Control Commission, the Michigan Liquor Control Code, only gets its authority from the Michigan Constitution. And what the Michigan Constitution says is alcoholic beverages in Michigan are defined as having 0.5% of alcohol by volume, or more than 0.5% of alcohol by volume. That's why every NA beer that you see says it's less than that. So it's 0.5% or more, it's considered alcohol. It's 0.5% or less, it's less than 0.5%, it's not considered alcohol. That means that the Liquor Control Commission, Liquor Control Code don't have authority over that beverage, so such that they can't regulate it, and they can't push it into the 3-tier system, which is what the MLCC has done, is they push that NA beer into the 3-tier system. And under the 3-tier system, a microbrewery cannot buy from a wholesaler. So they just can't get that NA beer into their tap rooms. And I think we're sort of doing a disservice to people who want to throw in an NA beer, want to add that. because it's really hard. It's really expensive for breweries to make NA beer. I mean, I know, Chris, you were a brewer for 5 years. Do you know how to make an NA beer?
Only from reading about it, because we were just not interested in the devotion of time or expense on equipment to do it to a high quality. But in the UK, there is no 3-tier system, so we just stocked whatever NA beer we wanted in our tasting room. It was easy.
So that's just an area where liquor control has just, I think, gone too far, and it's actually hurting people because they've gone too far.
Well, that also adds to the fact that me as a consumer, since it's considered beer, I can't buy Athletic off of the Athletic website or
Exactly.
partake or,
Yep.
insert NA beer because it's considered purchasing beer.
Yep.
And I remember the ins and outs of when Athletic first allowed it and then stopped. I'm guessing because the MLCC or someone filed a complaint. It seems like it, as you said, it's a disservice to a lot of people, because if I go to just about every single bar out there that isn't a major restaurant doesn't have soda guns. So they're, you're going and you're paying for per can or per bottle or something like that. And then of course they have to stock those bottles. So do they have enough? Most people, they're either going with Bricks or they're going with Fago or, trying to get at least stay local, but not, people want beer. They want beer flavored beer these days. They don't want soda when they're out with their friends. They want to have an IPA that's an NA. They want to have a stout that's an NA. They want to have it blows my mind how it seems like it's hurting. It doesn't help anyone that this law exists.
Yeah, because I'm at a brewery. I've had 2, and I want to I need a third because my friends are still out. I can have an NA beer, I can have a Coke, or I can have another beer. And I think most people just opt to have the other beer, where they could throw in an NA, a good NA, which is, it's funny. They're good now. Like,
yes.
They taste good. Mm-hmm. I can tell you my oldest just turned 12 and my youngest is 5. And my wife complains about how, when she was pregnant, the NA offerings were just not good. I don't want to disparage any NA offerings on your podcast, but some are just plain bad.
Well, even NA offerings before, like Budweiser, Heineken, like they recalibrated those beers because they taste a lot better than they used to taste 10, 15 years ago.
They're better. I haven't tried one because they were not good back then.
I love the Heineken 0.0. Easily one of my favorite crushable NAs that if I knew I was driving somewhere or I was the DD for a Halloween party and I'm like, well, I want to have fun. So I want to you kind of tie that flavor with fun in your brain. Like it hits that right sensor. Yeah. Like drinking water or drinking soda, you just kind of feel like you're just hydrating yourself. But drinking NA beer, you feel like you're participating in the fun a little bit more.
All right. I have a Heineken 0.0 in my garage fridge because my dad loves it and he left one. So I'll try it.
First, Heineken 0.0, great. Guinness 0.0, easily the best NA on the market. They knocked that out of the park. It tastes like Guinness.
Wow.
You could try that one.
Well, I'm sorry, Chris.
I haven't tried the Guinness. I'm a big fan of the Bitburger. Bitburger's doing it really well too.
Yeah, when I was on a drug and I couldn't drink for 8 months, and I was doing NA stuff every single night on this show, and I was going through everything from Bitburger, Partake, Athletic, all the fun little drops that Athletic was doing over at the smaller party stores. So yeah, the NA game is a lot better, and I'm very appreciative. But I guess
I want to throw in my favorite NA drink. Club soda, 3 dashes of bitters.
Okay.
It's the way to go. Tastes like a cocktail.
Have you tried any of the spiritless cocktails like Ritual?
I haven't. No.
They're good for mixing, not good for shot taking. Don't pour yourself a shot of spiritless whiskey to take a shot with friends who are going hard that night. But if you're mixing it, Ritual is a really good brand to do cocktails like an old fashioned or a whiskey sour. But I guess we currently have I would say a decent government that seems to be befitting of the alcohol industry right now, especially during COVID when we had we increased, they were loose on some of the laws for outdoor seating. They added the to go, like the ability for to goes for a lot of places, the ability for districts. Why do we not feel like we're seeing or catching up to a lot of other states that have better regulations within the state of Michigan?
Oh yeah, where should we start?
You're just you're just gonna get me in trouble.
We could skip it. I don't want to get you in trouble or anything.
No, there's some things where other states.
It just seems like I'll see Gretchen Whitmer. I know we don't talk partisan politics here, but at least I see Gretchen Whitmer doing a thing at Bell's like 3 times in the last year and a half. Like she loves beer. She's been great for craft. She's been great for alcohol in general. I think there's some things I don't think you're ever going to see changed. I think they're just too ingrained, and I don't know that people on all sides want it to change. Like you can go to a lot of states. We do a lot of work in Ohio. In Ohio, you can get retail permits as a brewery, and so actually, so my next beer is going to be from Land Grant Brewing in Columbus, Ohio. So my very good friends. You can go to Land Grant, and they have a full liquor license. So they have guest taps, they have wine, they have liquor, they have everything. And that's how it is in a lot of states. We don't have that here. It's because of the 3-tier system. I don't know that a lot of breweries or wineries really want that anyway. Because one thing that we have that a lot of states can't do is you can get all 3 licenses here. So, Chris and I have lots of friends who are, beverage lawyers like us around the country, and we tell them how, we don't open a brewery or a winery or distillery in Michigan without them also becoming a brewery, a winery, and a distillery. You get all 3 licenses so you can sell all 3 commodities. That's not allowed in a lot of states. So we have that benefit here, but you can't, have Jack Daniels at a brewery. And I don't know that most people care about that. Some of the to-go stuff, the social districts, we're ahead on those sorts of things. I think where you're seeing probably the reason you think we're behind, or the boogeyman for why we're behind, is really the Beer and Wine Wholesalers Association. They just don't want certain changes to happen. And it's no shock for them to hear me say that, because they know that I think that of them. But the Beer and Wine Wholesaler Association is one of the most powerful lobbies in the state of Michigan. And when they want something, they get something. If they don't want something, it doesn't happen. There's a bill that's going through right now that is absolutely bonkers, and it passed the Senate 37-1. And it's really going to hurt microbreweries and wineries in the state of Michigan. It got passed a week ago today. They assume it's going to pass the House. And what it's going to do is it's going to redefine what a brand means in the state of Michigan. And I won't bore you with the details, but basically what it's going to happen is it's really going to hurt self-distribution from microbreweries and wineries. Their ability to just self-distribute is going to be probably cut off because of this. And their ability to get creative with new brands is going to be probably non-existent anymore. Like, you won't see sub-brands popping up anymore in Michigan because this bill is going to make it go away. Are you talking like sub-brands like Superfluid was for shorts when they had Arcadia Ales, or Simo for homes?
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. Exactly. Because basically what this does, so try to say it in broad terms. So currently, the way distribution works in Michigan, franchise rights, a wholesaler gets the rights to a brand. But a brand is Two Hearted is the brand. Bell's is not the brand. So Two Hearted is a brand. Oberon, those are brands. And so what you could do is you would give a wholesaler rights to, if you had 10 brands that you made as a brewery, you could give a wholesaler 5 of those and keep 5 for yourself, these sort of specialty one-offs if you're a smaller brewery, right? and self-distribute those real specialty rare sort of things. And it would help you because there might be a higher price point. You know, your seasonal barrel-aged beer you're going to sell out anyway, and it's only going to go to 15 accounts. You can just self-distribute that, and you're going to keep more money. They're changing it now. Then you can do sub-brands, right, SEMO? You could basically create a whole new brand and self-distribute a whole entire, line of products. Like with, remember Bell's years ago created Kalamazoo Brewing Company. That was a fight with a wholesaler in Illinois. You can't do that anymore because what they're going to do is they're going to rewrite the liquor code to redefine what a brand is. So brand now means the brewery or the winery. And any DBA
automatically captures it all.
And what it is, it's the wholesaler saying, we want everything from you. And so they're basically taking, and what's funny is it'll capture current agreements. And well, I think it will, and the wholesalers are going to try to do it. And so they're just going to say, every time you create a new beer or a new wine, a new brand, we get it all.
How does that go for brands that wouldn't even leave the brewery itself? So, for example,
it would only mean distribution.
I'm sorry?
It only whatever goes into distribution.
Okay.
So if you sold it in the front door, it'll be fine.
Yeah, the tasting room exclusive things will remain that way so long as that's the exclusive outlet.
Yeah. But so I'm wearing a Holmes hat right now, right? There's Holmes and there's Smooch. Okay, but that's all under, now those are one. They mean the same thing now.
Okay.
Another major area of disparity. Now this is national, but in Michigan, this is changing the subject just a tad, but is direct shipping to consumers. So today, a winery can apply for a permit, and I can go on any Michigan winery's website who has the permit, order wine straight to my home, straight to my office, essentially anywhere. And they can put that in with USPS, FedEx, UPS, and it'll just come to my house. A retailer, so a party store, can do that with spirits, but a brewery can't do it at all. Unless they're using their own employees and their own vehicles to deliver it to your house. But they cannot drop it with FedEx and ship it from the UP down to Detroit or vice versa.
And out of state as well. You could buy wine from a winery in Napa, but you can't buy beer from a brewery in California.
Why is that?
It have them ship it to you. Why?
Yeah.
Because the liquor control code is not written to allow it. So there is one provision in the liquor control code that says wineries can ship to consumers. And this was the Granholm v. Hell, this huge lawsuit over this. It's been probably 10 years now since Granholm was decided. But originally in Michigan, it was a Michigan winery could ship wine to a Michigan resident, but an out-of-state winery could not.
Mm-hmm.
And the state got sued over that and actually went to the U.S. Supreme Court. And it was determined that violated what's called the Interstate Commerce Clause, but called the Dormant Commerce Clause, because it preferred Michigan businesses to out-of-state businesses. And the decision there, the result was out-of-state wineries can ship to Michigan consumers now. But there is no provision that says Michigan breweries can ship to Michigan consumers.
Which
if
means
it were, then out-of-state could do it as well.
So if you opened up if during COVID, one of our representatives created that law to attempt to get, more beer to the people from these breweries that are struggling, doing that in turn would obviously cause the lawsuit from, XYZ brewery to be like, hey, I want to ship to Michigan too. And, I would assume case law would.
It would be automatic. It'd be almost automatic. You couldn't write it otherwise. Yeah.
How so explain to us, I don't know if you guys know how or what happened. How has Tavour come in and out of the state?
Because I don't know that they're doing it right.
Tavour.
Is that how you pronounce it? Tavour?
Tavour, yeah.
Go Puff.
I wrote that Tabor. All right.
They shouldn't be dealing in beer. I can say that conclusively, just because nobody's allowed to do that with beer in Michigan. Wine and spirits do have some authorization. Those big online national retailers have always been a bit of a head scratcher to me in terms of how they're pulling it off. I think they're waiting to get in trouble and seek forgiveness. If I'm really frank about it,
it's probably just because liquor control hasn't gone after them yet. One thing that liquor control does on wine, which kind of blows my mind, it just seems like a waste of resources. But I've defended a lot of these. Liquor control agents will actually go online and go to wineries out in. They seem to always be in California for some reason, and they will order a bottle of wine from a winery in California, have it shipped to their house. They'll take a bunch of pictures of it. They'll do a bunch of screenshots, and they'll do it for wineries that have not. In order to ship to Michigan, you have to get an out-of-state shipper's license, which is nothing. Was it $150, Chris? It's not much.
$150. The application takes an hour for someone who can read and write to complete.
It's like nothing. But what they'll do is they'll order wine and then they'll sue you in federal court if you deliver it to them, trying to get a bunch of money out of you. I think the statutory penalty is they always want $10,000 or $15,000, whatever it is per bottle.
I think they're actually going for $25,000 per shipment right now.
Is that what it is now?
That was the last one that I saw. That's after a couple of cease and desists. You get a warning.
They get warnings. But what ends up happening is a lot of times these wineries get referred to us because we have a bunch of friends in California who are lawyers, and they'll refer them to us. We just have them apply for the permit, the shipping license, and then the lawsuit goes away. It's just it's funny to me. I will say the good thing about that is we've gotten some good wine because a couple of those wineries will then, once they have the permit, they'll ship us some wine.
I want to catch up on a few questions from the chat. Rob, one of the hosts, asked, does NA beer count towards the barrelage for self-distribution and distribution in the state of Michigan?
Does it or should it?
Currently it does.
Should it? It should not.
And it incurs an excise tax. Should it? No.
It should not.
And Bats McGee over in our Twitch is saying that Tavor for the state of Michigan was getting around by shipping it to a medical supply company who would then hand deliver it to the end user.
A medical supply company?
That doesn't sound legit.
Doesn't sound legit to me.
Well, there's a reason they're not in the state anymore.
I was going to say that's why they're not doing it anymore.
I mean, because there were third-party delivery services, which are allowed, but the problem is they have to get the product somehow, and they can't get it without going essentially through wholesale.
Yeah, or you have to those third-party delivery services like DoorDash, etc. They get it from a retailer. Like they'll go to a bar or to a party store.
To a wholesaler, though, yeah. So,
how would say someone like Jack, say it's a brewery out in Phoenix, Arizona. They don't distribute to the state of Michigan. Could Jack, holding his SDD and SDM, I think he's got a Class C too because he's got at least to-go beer or growlers to go there. Would he be able to buy directly from them to get shipped to him since he is a retailer, or
nope?
No,
because they couldn't do self-distribution to him.
Because they couldn't bring it with their own car, their own.
But oddly, you can if it's spirits. It's allowed for spirits in Michigan.
So if I owned Phoenix Distilling and I didn't have a big distribution, wholesale, anything like that, and I'm Jack, and somebody asked me, hey, can you get this Phoenix, rum? And he calls them up, they can ship it to him and he can sell it to the customer.
That there is an out-state self-distributor permit available to distilleries, but not to wineries and not to breweries. Yeah, it's another head scratcher, and I think it all comes down to we have a very old 3-tier system in Michigan. The laws have been there since the 50s. The ills that they were designed to address in 1950 don't exist anymore. But the laws are still there. Part of it was the mob, frankly.
Okay.
Well, that's the 3-tier system. Well, the 3-tier system wasn't really because of the mob. It was because originally the brewers held all the power. So originally the brewers, there were not a lot of breweries. So pre-prohibition, every neighborhood had a brewery. They were all hyper local. Post-prohibition, those all went away, and all the breweries became massive. So think of Ireland right now, where you basically have 2 breweries, really 1, right? Guinness really controls all of Ireland. It's the biggest brewery in Ireland. Every pub you go to has Guinness. And Guinness owns a lot of the pubs in Ireland. That's what ended up happening is all the massive breweries owned all the pubs. And so you only had that beer being sold at every restaurant, every bar in the United States were just a few breweries. The 3-tier system was intended to get rid of that. And so that's why a brewer could no longer own a bar or restaurant because they're called tied houses. So a tied house is a bar or restaurant that only sells one brand of beer. And so that's where the 3-tier system started from. And then in the 80s and 70s and 80s, you actually had franchise law come around because the brewers, again, had too much power. There weren't a lot of brewers then, and they were dominating the small mom and pop wholesalers. Because the wholesalers at that time were really small, family businesses. But that dynamic has flipped with consolidation, where now the wholesalers are massive. I mean, the wholesalers are bigger than anybody else. I mean, Reyes is a massive, Brown-Forman, those are massive wholesalers right now. And not Brown-Forman, but, Brown, I guess, broke up. But you have a few just massive wholesalers, and they hold all the power. But the franchise laws haven't flipped yet to take the power away from the wholesalers and give it back to the small mom and pop microbreweries.
Do you, in your lifetime, see that some of these fixes will come through, or do you think that it is so ingrained in law that it'll never get changed unless there's a massive, I don't want to say structural issue with wholesalers, but it just seems like there's so much control that there's no control to control them?
I think it'll get nibbled away at. I don't think a 3-tier system and franchise will ever go away, and I don't know that it should, but it'll get nibbled away at because you've got a few states here or there that keep getting pretty good reforms. I think it was in Massachusetts a couple of years ago. A lot of what's going on now is you're getting outs for smaller breweries where, like in Michigan, the franchise law is, doesn't matter how big you are, a wholesaler, it's marriage without divorce. That's what franchise is. You can never get out of it. You can occasionally. But now a lot of states, some states are putting in provisions where if you make under a certain number of barrels a year, you can just get out. You got to pay money, you can get out. Or if you're under a certain percentage of the wholesaler's portfolio, you can get out. The problem is the out. Because right now, the way you get out of a distribution agreement or wholesale agreement is you pay fair market value. Well, you say, okay, what's fair market value? Well, no one really knows because fair market value is a multiple of the wholesaler's prior 12-month gross sales, not net, gross is how most people calculate it. And the multiple, they sort of make it up. It could be 1 time, it could be 4 times, it could be 12 times. I had a deal in Florida, it's probably been 10 years, where I think the wholesaler wanted 12 times. And so for really, really small breweries, you're talking like, hey, write us a check for $1 million or $5 million. It's just you can't get out of it. Doesn't make any sense.
Is this kind of what we saw with Liberty Street when they got out of their deal? And basically their out was they signed a non-compete where they could never distro again, basically.
I don't know. Joe didn't call me, so I don't know.
Oh, well, I better go to Livonia over here and to give him a ring.
I know.
That would be something of value that I could see being negotiated. I mean, if you really got something on the wholesaler, I mean, I've seen it where they'll just release you because they don't want to deal with it. Like they're just as done as the brewery is, and then they're happy to go their separate ways.
I've had a few.
Sorry, I'm gonna cut you off real quick. So I want to get to that real quick. Do the breweries have any leverage in this situation? Like, does the wholesaler just be like, you know what, we're done, goodbye, cut off the contract, and I can't give you fair market value to get out of this contract? Like, I don't want to deal with you anymore. Like,
there is some fun that can be had. I'll tell you 2 stories without naming the breweries.
okay.
I had a deal once in Virginia where a wholesaler, it was a single wholesaler in the entire state of Virginia, and the wholesaler sold the rights to the brewery to 4 more wholesalers. So divided up into 4. And we said, no, that's not in our business model. We have a single wholesaler in every state. We actually went to litigation over it. And we went to court, and it drug on for, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 months. It wasn't crazy long for a litigator. That's not a very long time. And in the end, what we ended up telling the wholesaler was, doesn't really matter if you win and you get to keep our rights after this lawsuit's over with. We're only in 20 states right now. And even if you win, we're going to dry you out because we have no obligation to send you any beer. And we will go to open up every other state before we ever consider Virginia. And then we're going to go to Europe, and we're going to go to Asia. We will never go to Virginia. And they said, well, Virginia's a really good beer state. You can't not be in Virginia. And I told our lawyer, I said, most of our customers will just go over to D.C. anyway, because all of Virginia's sales are in Northern Virginia. And they'll just go to D.C. and we can go to D.C. And so that was like, we had leverage just because of that. And they eventually settled and let us out. So that was a good result. It cost, money in litigation. The other fun one that I've done is I had a brewery who had self-distribution, and they actually built it up a lot. They were self-distributing like 8,000 barrels. It was a lot. And we sold that to a wholesaler for fair market value, which ended up being a couple $1 million. I think the brewery got like $2.5 million in that deal. Just got a check for their self-distribution rights. And the wholesaler was happy because they had, accounts already set up. I think there was like 300 or 400 accounts that were consistently buying. And so they just walked into easy sales. And the brewery was very happy because they got to get a bunch of new fancy equipment. And the owners probably, actually got paid for once. So that was good. That was a good deal. So there's some good to be had there.
And then every once in a while, you can get another wholesaler to pay that fair market value because they want to take your brand into their own portfolio every once in a while. But it's still a huge amount of money that nobody's pulling tickets to sign up and pay for. I should. This is probably primary importance. I'm onto a new beer. This is the Holy Goat. It's a Doppelbock from Pink Barrel Cellars out in rural Kent County, a little farm brewery winery. Just picked this up on Wednesday. And it's delicious.
I haven't had that. I gotta have that. If you haven't been there, it is an incredible time in the fall with like the corn maze and the animals, and you pick apples. Yeah, it's a good time. I have moved on to Land Grant Brewing's Batch 1000. It is a chili imperial stout brewed with ancho chili and tamarind. Delicious.
Since we're talking about new beers, I also opened a new one up. I have the
Tell me.
Fracture IPA. which is actually not the one I picked. I actually picked a different one, but I don't hate that I got this one. So from Holmes.
I guess I'll round out because I did myself open up a nice Yingling Light, 99 calorie, 3.2 grams of carbs.
Nicely done.
Where did you get that from? Did you bootleg that into Michigan?
I was under the limit of crossing state lines with the beer that I had, sir. Thank you very much. Do I know what the limit is? Absolutely not. Did I probably break it? Absolutely, maybe.
What's funny is the other day I was watching TV and my wife had gone to bed and I was flipping channels and Smokey and the Bandit came on when they're bootlegging Coors. And I was like,
band.
And I had to watch it.
Oh, this guy right here knows how to live. Mark Matthews on our Facebook just cracked open a PBR tall boy.
That's my boy Mark. Hey, Mark.
He's a classy guy. Can confirm. Know him.
Yeah.
I do have Miller High Life in the fridge.
That will make Chris happy, his Wisconsin roots.
You know, I know just from listening to you guys over the years here and there, I know that it's typically a 2-beer podcast. So I did consider holstering a Miller High Life because I respect it. It's one of my all-time favorites.
See, I just went heavy and heavy. Dark. I mean, who drinks a barrel-aged stout when it's 85 degrees out? It's still.
Oh, you're missing Dan. Dan's in Phoenix, Arizona, and it'll be like 115 out on Friday at 5 p.m. and he's chugging along a Bourbon County barrel-aged stout.
Stout season is every season.
Yeah,
but not during the day. At night,
Yeah.
We haven't gotten to Underbergs yet. Is this an Underberg podcast?
Oh,
we are not an Underberg podcast. We never got into the craze, even when we were at the studio in Royal Oak, Michigan. We never the one time we had M4 on, which usually M4 is the one that always brings the Underberg.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
We had Mike on over the phone, and then some of his crew was in town to come hang out and talk, but only he was over the phone. But they didn't bring us anything, so I never caught on here on the show.
I will say that Mike still owes me a bandolier, and he promised it, and I still have not received it.
Mike's the type of guy where he can just make Underberg appear without being physically present. So I'm surprised none actually showed up.
Well, we've been talking for almost an hour, and we didn't get a chance to get to a lot of the things, so we might need to do a part 2 another day. I'm sure you guys will have no problem cracking open some bigger ones for a second podcast. But why you guys came on the show, or why I texted Joe last night on a holiday randomly that I've never texted him before.
Who gave you my number?
That would be you right here.
Oh, there's my card. All right.
I had to go through my nice little Rolodex of business cards because I saw it and I'm like, I'm pretty sure I know someone from Miller Canfield. So yeah, you gave it to me probably 6 years ago.
Okay.
So
that's called playing the long game.
yes, very, very much so. A brewery here in Michigan got in trouble for playing music that they should not have played. Prior to the show going live, myself as well as Joe and Chris were going back and forth talking about all the dumb nuances about music, playing music and everything like that. So I'm a brewery. We're going to pretend I'm a brewery owner. What is your sales pitch to them to make sure that they do not get in trouble? Someone in the hospitality industry, because there's, again, so many nuances, so many issues. How do you suggest they go about making sure that CSAC doesn't, or I guess it was BMI for this one, come after them?
I'll give you I'll do the high level answer, and then Chris and Ken, I know you guys can fill in the details on this. So the high level answer is anytime that you play music in your brewery, you have got to pay somebody for the ability to play that music. There is no music you can play that is, you don't have to pay somebody, whether it's CSAC, BMI, ASCAP, was it GRI, Sony, whoever it is. someone owns the license to that and you have to pay them. The easiest way to do that is to buy there's like Pandora for business or Spotify for business. There are streaming services that are specifically for businesses that pay all the licenses. Your personal Pandora account, your personal Spotify account doesn't have the right licenses for public broadcast. So you can't do that. We can get into TVs. TVs are another thing. You can have TVs, but just don't have the volume on. That's where you get into the problem in the volume on. That's sort of that's a whole different area. Bands, anybody who comes to play music in your brewery, you have to pay someone for that. A cover band, you better have all of the licenses, or you better go through their set list and figure out who owns all those songs, because there isn't just one catalog. BMI has its own artist, ASCAP has its own artist, CSAC have their own artist. And so if you've got a cover band who's doing, all 80s songs, it's probably going to run the gamut. Even bands that play original music, if they're big enough, they've probably sold their catalog to somebody else who owns those rights, and you got to pay that. So you actually could have a band come play at your brewery who doesn't own the rights to the songs they're about to play. And then you get into vinyl night. Vinyl night, you got to pay somebody. If you have CDs, you got to pay somebody, because just buying the CD or buying the vinyl, you don't get the rights to that. Karaoke is the same way. Somebody better have a license. Some of the karaoke DJs will say they have it, but make them show it to you. And we say all this. The downside of it is BMI and ASCAP and CSAC, they're relentless because it's their job. They will send you cease and desist. They will troll your social media. They will show up and record. They'll take video of if you're a big place, they'll take video of it to prove that you played those songs. And if they can prove you played those songs, and I can't remember the stats, is it 10,000 a song? It's a lot.
It varies between each individual place. It's a lot because they'll always obviously want to try to settle for less.
Yeah.
Like they'll be like, all right, you played 10 songs at $8,000 a song. You owe us $80,000 for those 10 songs. And that's not the license to play them again. That's just because you played them once.
Because you played them once. Yeah.
And so it's like, hey, we'll do that. But if you buy our license and pay us $1,000 today, we'll call it a wash.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and they have you, because for the most part, they're right. If you played it, you don't really have much of a defense. And I've defended these cases before. You don't have much of a defense if you played it without having the right licenses. Now, I have had a lot of times where they'll come after a place and we'll say, what are you doing? We have your license. We already paid for this. Why are you coming after us? That happens too.
Yeah, the performance rights organizations, they hire a lot of, I don't want to call them temp workers, but basically contract workers who make money to get, for you to buy license. Like they make money based on every license that they sell that you buy. And in the business that I work in, obviously I see that issue. The one thing I want to expand a little bit regarding the TV before I pass it to Chris, because it looks like Chris wants to get onto this conversation. So why Joe said that you can't play TV, if there's any song that is a jingle, say for example, and we'll use everyone's favorite troll song, Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up, and it's trying to sell some, Audi car. Well, because the volume is playing that, even though you've paid Comcast for Business to play the TV, you didn't pay whoever owns Rick Astley that Never Gonna Give You Up for that song to be on. That's the same for if you played the Grey's Anatomy show with the music episode, the musical episode, or Glee. God forbid Glee. God, how many different artists that they do for that?
I'm too young for that, or too old for that. Sorry.
I mean, Glee was like 20 years ago. That's
I'm old.
It was not that long ago.
I'm old.
So that's why you have to have the TV off, or that's why a lot of places, like when commercials happen, they'll turn off the TV volume. If you're watching like a Lions game, they'll turn off the TV volume in between. But again, if the Lions, they're playing Eminem and that feed at the game comes through the feed on the TV, you have to have the license to play that song. It's ridiculous.
So when a TV show puts a song into their TV show,
They paid a license fee.
Yep.
They paid a license fee just to use the song, not to actually have it broadcast anywhere.
Because
they
you're
didn't
broadcasting it at a bar.
Yeah, because it's two different sort of broadcasts. Because the bar is broadcasting it to the public, but the TV broadcast is technically it's really for residences. It's for households.
So a TV show puts a song in their show, and then a bar pays to broadcast this TV show.
Yep.
But they can't broadcast that song from
Without
that TV show?
without having paid the right music
Paying an
license,
extra
correct.
fee.
Now
Isn't there a 17-second rule where if it's less than 17 seconds, you're not
there is some
you
nuance
don't need
to
a
it
license.
as well, and I don't know it off the top of my head, but there is some nuance to the TV broadcast as well, because there's also there's an issue of the number of TVs as well. I think if it's under, I don't know, 2 or 3 TVs, there's a number of TVs as well. It's a federal regulation on it. But this is why it's incredibly difficult, incredibly nuanced to figure that all out.
When they're so aggressive, I swear they've got bots in addition to independent contractors trolling websites, because they cover so much ground. I mean, we hear about it. I mean, throughout the year, close to every other week, where someone's getting an email that looks a lot like spam, looks like a scammer. So they might not take the first few seriously because it doesn't look serious, and they keep coming.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I was actually at the Craft Brewers Conference in Nashville,
2 years ago.
Minneapolis, one or two. I can't remember what it was. And I went to a program that, someone from BMI or ASCAP was talking, and there's actually one of my clients was on the panel as well. As 2 people were giving the talks. I went to go see it. And it was funny, though, the way that, when he explained it, you get it, why they do it, because they actually had an artist there who, makes his living on those like 11-cent residuals. You're like, okay, I get it. Like that, you're making your money on that. And so it makes sense that they do it. Some of the methods, I don't know, seem a little too far, but you realize that artist, that's where they're making their money. Mm-hmm. That's their entire livelihood is that song.
Well, the brewery in question said that BMI said that they emailed the brewery or mailed the brewery like 25 notifications. But again, as Chris said, like a lot of these notifications look like a spam, look like a scam, look like they're trying to not shake you down. They look fake. They honestly look like in the industry that I'm in, I see probably 30 to 40 of these emails a week from customers of mine.
Yeah, they totally look fake. I've seen them. Yeah.
And you can, there's so much nuance just in hospitality, but that's just hospitality. Like when you get further into the music industry, not to shock you even more, Wendy, but this is when the Peloton, if you guys saw the Peloton lawsuit that happened with the way that they were broadcasting music on their system and how they had to pay, it was like a 10-figure settlement just from Peloton. And I think it was like 15 or 17 million dollars. Like they had to pay out of pocket because of the music that they were playing. And like with gyms, like you could play music, but if you have instructed fitness, you need a different license for instructed fitness. You need a different license for on-demand play. You need a different license for X. Like it's such a huge pain that I feel bad for these retailers that are in these spaces because it's almost impossible to get around it. And now you try to get around it and you hope you're doing the right thing, or you pay, $5,000 a year to all these performance rights organizations just to, the thought that you're still doing it right. And that still doesn't even mean you're doing it right.
Yeah. Here's the shameless plug. If you run into the issue, call Chris or me and we'll help you figure it out.
Yep. I can give you guys Joe's cell phone number. I'll put it right in the show. I'm just kidding.
Blast it.
He's blasted.
Something that's always seemed
I'm
like
okay with
maybe,
the email address. That's
something that's always seemed like too easy of a fix are those internet-based jukeboxes. I don't know exactly how they work, but I presume there's licensing built into that, where the only way that music comes out is if someone asks that machine to play it, and I assume there's licenses. So, Ken, you know how those work?
Yeah. So, internet jukeboxes. So AMF or AMI, because AMF is the bowling company. AMI Touch Tunes. If you basically they put the jukebox in for free, and then they take a higher percentage cut. They still give the bar a percentage cut. So the music that's on random when people aren't requesting music is licensed through them. The music on demand is obviously paid for through the licensing, through requesting it on demand. And then you, as the owner, want to do it because it's $0 out of pocket. Costs you nothing. And then you still make money. You're actually making money on this. Whereas you don't necessarily get to control the music that's played now. So I can go in there and play 6 different versions of In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida live back to back to back to back to back. And I just ran the jukebox for 2 hours straight.
Well, I mean, the guitar or the drum solo in In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida is totally worth it.
Which drum solo?
That's true. What do you have to pay to get the button put in behind the bar, the skip button?
So within music licensing, there are skip buttons that you can have, but there's certain rules that you have with the skip. So I just can't skip. I can only skip a certain amount of times in a rolling hour. Typically, the number is 5 or 6. So it's still a decent amount. But if I went in and did like Freebird and you skipped it, and then it went to In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida and you skipped it, and then it went to some live version of Jesus of Suburbia by Green Day, which is probably a 13 to 14 minute song since it's live. Like, you can only skip so much before you can't skip again. It's a shame Dan isn't here, because we used to actually go to this bar in Ferndale called Danny's, and we would bet money on how fast they would skip Wannabe by the Spice Girls. They didn't play it. And then we would say over under how many seconds. So each turn, one of us would say, we were like, we're trying to look for the remote, where the remote is. We're looking at how busy is it for the bartender. Tom Parker said, "Are there AC/DC exclusions?" Asking for Dark Horse. If they skip your song, you still get paid. Like the license that goes through, there's no refunds, nothing like that. And Touch Tunes doesn't care.
Why would
they're
you
like,
want to
you request at your own risk. What was that, Wendy?
Why would you want to skip the Spice Girls?
It's like an Irish pub in downtown Ferndale. It's not the right place.
I'm familiar with the place. I still don't understand.
Because it's the Spice Girls?
Fair question, Wendy. Fair.
It just became a game, though. We were there like every other week, and we would just play it. Like, there are days where I'd go up to the jukebox, or I'd do it from my phone, or I'd do it on our way in, so they wouldn't even know we tried to request it, because they'll look to see who requested it too.
So that brings up another question, because I had a friend post on Facebook the other day that they were at a brewery and they fast-tracked past somebody's choices to play some music, and the people working in the brewery were really shitty to them.
They paid the bonus credits.
This is definitely not a legal question. This is more of a, what is your opinion?
This is a can I use foul language?
Yeah.
This is like are you going to be a dick kind of thing? And this is it's sort of, I have these conversations. I have 2 boys, and I don't usually say don't be a dick, but I try to teach them to be nice to people, and there are certain times where people like do things not to upset other people, be concerned about their feelings. I would never pay the extra money to skip somebody's songs because they paid the money,
Right.
and just because you have more money to waste to get your song in there. I mean, if you're going to do it for one song, sure, but if you're going to do it to play 10 songs, whew, you might be the dick.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining. We went a
Oh,
little
we're
bit.
going to leave on that note.
No, because we always end with the fun question. We always
No,
end with the
let's
fun
end the fun
question.
question
Make
still.
sure-
Oh, wait, I don't know what Wendy's thought on that is. Was it shitty?
Well, so I don't know because I don't know how many songs were skipped. I do know that the treatment that they received after they skipped those songs was not acceptable, in my opinion, from any server. So my request was send me your playlist so if I ever go there, I can play it while I'm there.
You play it. Wait, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't.
They
The
played
server
$1 for
shouldn't
the track,
care.
and then they paid another $1 for it to be the next song, basically. That's all it is.
But it wasn't the patron that was getting all excited. It was the staff.
Yeah,
No,
like
the
the staff got shitty with them.
Oh.
And I don't think that's acceptable.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. The staff they shouldn't care. I mean, look, you work in a bar, you listen to like
Stupid stuff.
you have no choice to what you listen to most of the time. And you for the most part, I'm sure you just tune it out after a while.
Yeah, you're gonna hear the same.
I mean,
music all
was
the
it
time
was
at
it
night.
something truly horrendous that got to the top of the list? Do you know what song they were
I
playing?
don't know. I haven't gotten this. I haven't gotten
Did
the
they
list
play
yet.
Baby Shark?
So, but I did ask, like, can you please send me your playlist so that if I ever go there, I can play it while I'm there, just to see was it the playlist that they were mad at, or just the fact that their songs got skipped?
Is Baby Shark available at the bar?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god, I play it.
We have on our system we have Baby Shark and Blippi and Kids Bop and all those other fun little artists
Oh,
that
so
people
terrible.
can request. But within our system, you can actually ban artists, ban songs, ban genres, so you can make sure that you don't get that kind of stuff.
Now,
Like
the-
if
go ahead.
I was just saying, like if you're Jeff Lebowski, you can ban the Eagles.
Straight up just ban the Eagles.
The Kids Bop stuff isn't so bad. I do remember putting Kids Bop on my radio in my car when I had my niece and nephew in there one time, and it took me about 3 days to figure out that I was still listening to the Kids Bop channel after they had been there.
I think you just like clean music.
Maybe, I don't know.
Nothing wrong with liking
Nothing
clean
wrong with
music.
that.
No, there's plenty of good clean music out there. As we end each and every show, we ask a friendly, fun question to kind of round out the night. Wendy, do you have a question for Joe or Chris that might be a little bit more lighthearted than the trademark music and liquor laws of the United States?
All right. What is your favorite beer right now?
Ooh.
You can't ask that question.
It changes all the time. I understand that. That's why I say right now.
It's like asking which of his kids is his favorite. Which of your kids are your favorite?
All right, I'm super locked in. I have an answer here. I'm really locked in. So I just booked travel to Germany to attend the Oktoberfest in September, and
Nice.
there's a monastery about an hour outside of Munich. You can get there from a central city train. It's called Ondex, and they have a Doppelbock Dunkel that is, because of the setting in which you drink it and just how delicious it is my single favorite beer experience of my entire life, and I'm absolutely locked in on reliving that over the next few months. So Ondex Doppelbock Dunkel. That's why I've got the Holy Goat from Pink Barrel, because I've just got Doppelbock on the mind. So
Nice.
All right, I'm going to use your out there as well, because you can't ask me my favorite beer, because I'll get text from all my clients saying, why didn't you say my beer? So
yeah,
I'll
pick
go-
a German one.
I'm going to pick a Belgian one of my favorite drinking experiences. But it's also a great beer that everyone should try, and I think most people probably have by now at this point. So I got married in 2009 in April. Funny story is I started at Miller Canfield. So I worked at another law firm for 4 years before I started Miller Canfield. February 12 was my first day of 2009. And when I was interviewing, I said, hey, just so you guys know, I'm getting married in April. I have a 2-week honeymoon already booked. Are you okay with that? And they said, yep, it's cool. So I started February 12. I got married April 4, and I went on a 2-week honeymoon, and the firm was perfectly cool with it. It was great. So my wife and I, we went to Paris, and then went to Brussels. Paris for her because she speaks French, and we did all the wine, and in Paris is beautiful. Went to Brussels. I had been there once before, been to Bruges once before, and I wanted to go to West Fletcheren and could not find a way to get to West Fletcheren. I tried and tried and tried. I couldn't get there. And so we were in Bruges for a day, and I said, well, I'm going to find a West Fletcheren glass, like a chalice. And I actually ended up finding 4 of them. I have 4 of them now that all made it home. And we were in a shop, a glass shop, looking for West Fletcheren glasses. And the woman heard me say West Fletcheren. And she says, oh, you went to West Fletcheren? I said, yeah, sure. And she went in the back into her fridge and pulled a West Fletcheren 12. And she walked out front and she cracked it open. She handed it to me. And she said, €8 or €6, whatever it was. And I paid her. And I said, I can just drink it? She said, yeah. So my wife and I walked outside and we sat in a little square. And I drank a West Fletcheren 12 out of the bottle, in the middle of the day in April in Bruges. And there's actually a picture that we have on our Alexa. It scrolls the screen, your screensaver. Every once in a while, I see that picture of me drinking a West Fletcheren 12 out of the bottle. And that is probably one of the best drinking experiences in my life. And I've had it probably 10 times since then, but that's still the best time I ever had it.
Well, I mean, it was probably better if it was on draft as opposed to in the bottle, but that's
right.
One thing.
Always better.
Always better. Well, do they have it in draft?
I have no idea.
Literally one of my favorite stories that I've heard so far on this when I ask that type of question.
Gentlemen, my final question for you is pretty simple. What is the dumbest thing somebody thought was to be legal that they told you?
Oh, that they thought was legal.
Yeah.
I used to do, so that we're going to go outside of alcohol law.
That's fine.
But I used to do criminal work when I worked in Milwaukee, and someone asked me to peddle what's known as a sovereign citizen defense.
Oh.
And
yeah.
It's essentially saying, I'm not Chris Gartman. Chris Gartman's somewhere else. I am this entity that the laws cannot touch. Therefore, your criminal prosecution is absolutely meaningless. And they try to cite sections from what's known as the Uniform Commercial Code, which applies to contracts for the sale of goods, as their one of the completely misinformed bases for why a state cannot prosecute you. If you do want to get into a fun YouTube wormhole, look up court video of people peddling the sovereign citizen defense. Judges have zero time for it. You go straight to jail as soon as you bring that stuff up. So someone tried to convince me that was legal, and I'm just like, nope, I'm not having it. I was very new at being a lawyer then, and even still, my bullshit radar was just firing on all cylinders.
All right, I don't have a good story like that. I don't think I've dealt with that. I don't know that I have the dumbest thing that people have asked for or thought was legal. I think the thing that probably, and Chris will probably agree with this, the thing that drives us probably the most nuts is when someone takes a contract or an agreement that we've written and then changes it and says, see Chris's head, and then tries to, I can make this work for this next thing. That always sort of drives me crazy. I will say what's funny is I have written probably a few thousand distribution agreements over the last 15 years. Maybe not 1,000, but it's probably close. But I have a certain style to my agreement. The way it's written, it's in a style you wouldn't think to write a contract in this style. And so I see it. And the funniest thing to me is when I get that agreement and it comes back to me and another lawyer will say, well, here's my standard agreement. Let's work off mine. I say, this is mine. Where'd you get it from? Because I know it's mine because the way the numbering works, I'm the only one that uses that kind of numbering system for a distribution agreement. And I can run a red line and say, look, you're just using my agreement. It's always fun when I get my agreement back.
Joe, Chris, thank you so much for taking us into the ins and outs of some of the many laws within the state of Michigan, the U.S., whether it's music, alcohol, etc. So much thank you for your time. Remember, folks, this was all entertainment. Please do not take what these gentlemen say as legal advice. You did not pay them.
Get calls first.
Yeah, call them first. I'll make sure, again, Joe's cell phone number is going to be right in the show notes. For myself, for the folks here from Miller Canfield, is it Paddock and Stone?
Don't forget those guys.
Right on.
Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. How can they find you guys? They need legal help. What's your website?
MillerCanfield.com is our website. Emails are, mine is Infante, INFANTE at MillerCanfield.com. And Christopher is Gartman, GARTMAN at MillerCanfield.com. Very easy.
Or you can hit me up on X. I'm at Bev Council on X.
At Bev Council on X. All right, that's going to do it for us here. Episode 350 in the books. We will be back in a couple weeks. No matter what you think of your beer, we think it's better on draft. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Great to meet you guys.